How do we, as seasoned mothers, share information about pregnancy, childbirth, and early childhood years without trauma dumping, but also without making it feel like it's all sunshine and roses? There's only one thing that I'm willing to share with every single pregnant woman, and it's because I think that it's empowering to them, and we'll talk about that in a second. However, I think that we first need to understand that when we're listening to people who are newly pregnant or newly parenting, everything is new and everything is scary. And we can relate to that because it doesn't matter how many people you've babysat, it doesn't matter how many, young siblings you have, until you're handed that child, your child for the first time. That's the game changer. Because that's a seat you've never sat in before. You have never gone and walked through this experience, and everything is new and scary, and it just feels very intimidating. And so what we should be doing is putting seeds in their head of, hey, this may have happened to me, but I overcame it, and everything's okay now. And that experience may not have been exactly what I anticipated being part of my story, but now it is part of my story. Don't get me wrong, birth trauma is a real thing. I almost died after my oldest son. So, I understand the absolutely terrifying parts about childbirth. And I was always very open with my providers to say, look, I know this was probably a one-off thing. However, it's something that's in the back of my mind postpartum. Could you please take better care of me? And almost all of my providers really understood that. But rather than say to somebody, hey, I almost bled to death from a postpartum hemorrhage because of retained placenta, I'll say things like, well, when you're postpartum, the things that you really want to make sure is that you do have after pains, because those are really important. Actually, even though it's really uncomfortable, they are important for you. And always make sure that you're looking to make sure if you have a fever, because if you do have a fever, that's something you need to talk to your doctor about. See, I just shared the warning signs without being like, well, the third time I was in the hospital, I was in a trauma bay. Because that's not comforting. Another thing is preeclampsia. I had preeclampsia with my first. My blood pressure was creeping up. So you can say things like prioritizing those appointments the last few weeks are really important just to make sure that your blood pressure is good. When people ask me about how they know they're in labor, I couldn't make a rational decision when I was in labor. I couldn't decide whether or not I could order pizza with one of them. And my best friend was finally like, you're in labor. I was like, no, I just don't know whether or not I should order pizza, looking back, totally in labor. And then from that point forward, I always knew I was in labor because I couldn't make a decision or because my water broke. The one thing I will bring up with everybody is that I pulled all 9 of my babies out. I delivered all 9 of my babies. And the only reason it started was because my first one, the midwife looked at me and said, give me your hands, just as I was delivering it. I was like, what? She was like, you're going to pull your baby out. I was like, whoa, I'm the pitcher, you're the catcher. I feel like we defined those terms before we got here. But she looked me dead in my eyes and said, I know you can do this, give me your hands. And sure enough, I pulled him out. And a trend was started. I pulled all of the rest of them out too. Because I knew I could, because I was part of the birth process. It wasn't something that was happening to me. It was something that was happening through me. Our goal as seasoned moms should be to educate the next round of new moms, not to scare them. And it's possible to share our stories without sharing all the horrific parts.